Thank you very much. I think my remarks will probably be much briefer than that version of my bio. What I would like to do this evening is just say a few words about Syria, about what's going on, and some of what I have to say will be personal in nature. One of which was alluded to in the dramatic reading of my so-called bio. 7 years ago, I was minding my own business in the private sector, seated at home one evening, when I got a call from our former U.S. Senate Majority Leader, George Mitchell, asking me to join him in the incoming Obama administration because he was being assigned as special envoy for Middle East peace. And the deal was he was going to try to get an agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians, and my job was to focus on the Israelis and the Syrians. So for the better part of 2 years, I spent some quality time in Damascus and in Jerusalem, trying to basically build a foundation for a treaty of peace between Israel and Syria. As of early March 2011, that foundation had been built. We were moving full speed ahead. And within days, it was gone. It was gone because the president of Syria decided that it would be more important to turn his security forces loose on peaceful demonstrators than to shoot them down. It was gone because in the information age, this brutality could not be hidden. It could not be covered up. And it spread like wildfire all over the country. Peace, or the possibility of peace, was replaced in very short order by a humanitarian abomination, which has only gotten worse over the past 4 years. Collective punishment, mass homicide, mass terror. This summarizes the survival strategy of a regime in Damascus. At the time I was trying to work on a peace treaty between Israel and Syria, there were approximately 23 million people living in the Syrian Arab Republic. That number today, according to the best estimates I can find, is about 17 million. And it's dropping rapidly. I think most of you are probably aware of some of the numbers associated with this abomination. 250,000 people killed, at least 250,000. According to the best estimates, of that 250,000, 190,000 civilians have been killed. Of that number, of the 190,000, about 180,000 killed by the so-called Syrian government. Roughly 5 million Syrians have left the country. Some as official refugees, some blending into economies around the world. Within the country, roughly 7 million people displaced from their homes. Tens of thousands of people wasting away in prisons, being subject to all manner of torture, starvation, and sexual abuse. 600,000 Syrians living under siege, denied the basics of nutrition and medical care. What's happening now is that between the Assad regime, the so-called Islamic State, Russia, and Iran, a rough, unsteady, unstable partition is being created. The partition between two very large criminal enterprises, one located in Damascus, the other located in Raqqa. And I'm telling you, people are literally voting with their feet. They're leaving. On the present course, left to its present course, Syria will be hemorrhaging human beings for years to come. It's really hard at this point to understand what it is in Syria that would hold people who have the slightest modicum of means and motivation to get out. I have a daughter and a son-in-law who live and work in Germany. They work in Munich. They live in a small village in southern Bavaria. They've recently befriended a young Syrian couple, husband-wife, both attorneys, who made the trip from Turkey across a wide expanse of salt water in a leaking boat to the island of Lesbos in Greece, and then walked all the way to Germany. All the way to Germany, they walked. Chancellor Merkel, of all the leaders of Europe, Chancellor Merkel was the one who recognized and expressed publicly the truth of the matter. If these are the kinds of people willing to take this kind of risk and walk all the way across Europe, these are the people I want in Germany. She's paying a price for that. It might not have been the wisest thing to say politically that explicitly, but it's true. This young couple, befriended and virtually adopted by my daughter and son-in-law, were actually living in a relatively secure, relatively safe neighborhood in Homs. It was a neighborhood under the control of the Syrian government. These were not people who were being exposed to starvation or barrel bombs or the usual array of Syrian government tactics. They left because they came to the conclusion the country is finished. Syria, as it lurches into a partition between these two horrendous forces, is not a place where you can have a decent living and raise a family. So, 23 million people in 2011, 17 million now, and dropping. Our country has pledged in the current fiscal year to take 10,000 Syrian refugees. Since the beginning of this conflict, there are now slightly in excess of 2,100 Syrian refugees in the United States. But even this number, as we all know, 10,000, even this number has become, in recent weeks, very, very politically controversial in the United States in the wake of these horrible atrocities in Paris and San Bernardino. Now, from my point of view, some of the things our politicians have had to say about this subject, some of these things are beyond regrettable. Without putting too fine a point on it, I think it's un-American to apply a religious test for immigrants and refugees. As a veteran, I find it particularly galling that some politicians who have not served in uniform since perhaps Cub Scouts are disrespecting the Muslim Americans who serve in our Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. Make no mistake about it. The leaders of the so-called Islamic State see the words of some of our politicians as gifts that keep on giving. How in the world, at the end of the day, are we going to defeat this so-called Islamic State monstrosity without the help of Muslims? What is it we're asking for here? What are our political leaders asking for? Do we want to terminate the help we are already getting from American Muslim communities in the law enforcement field? Do we really want American Muslim soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to put aside their uniforms and return to civilian life? Will we let our politicians manipulate our fear of terrorism so that they can get elected and the so-called caliph can win? I don't think this is going to happen. I think there are enough of us who are capable of acting as real Americans in real time. We have been welcoming Syrians to this country since the 19th century. We have seen the Syrian American community punch far above its own weight in terms of what it contributes to this country. In the end, I believe that we will welcome Syrians to these shores and help them realize the same kinds of dreams that motivated our people to come to the United States. In some respects, none of this is new. A century ago, in New York, my own family had the experience of being under suspicion by nervous neighbors, people who were worried about terrorism and sabotage. Because we had a German name, there was suspicion that perhaps my grandfather harbored sympathies for the Kaiser. In those days, the fears of those neighbors were genuine. The United States had gone to war, and there was worry. And these fears were extended even to a family that had already been in the United States for 3 generations. We had the experience of the Japanese in World War II. 110,000 people rounded up, while almost 3 times that number was enlisting to serve in the armed forces of the United States. We're able to look back at these episodes in our history with regret and perhaps a little bit of shame. Our challenge now is to act as real Americans in real time. Not to leave it to our descendants 25, 50, or 100 years from now to look back and say, well, it's too bad. They got it wrong. That was not a happy time for the United States. If we want to prevail, and I believe we will prevail, we will make this effort. We'll act as real Americans in real time, and we won't leave it for our descendants to regret our conduct. Thank you.